Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin and Familia. Oh my goodness, we're just past the draft, so we got great content, and I can't wait to bring it to you right now, to bring our invitado in right now. But first off, before you do that, please, por favor, I ask you as always, hey, give us a like and subscribe over on YouTube. Familia FFB, just give that thumbs up, hit that subscriber button, it helps us keep growing, and it'll just be a great thing. And also, hey, we're proud partner of Underdog Fantasy. Make sure put in that promo code Familia23. I'm going to match you up to the first $100 when you go Underdog. Get best ball. I've been doing a couple of live drafts on here. Been having so much fun. The puppies out there, best ball mania. Get in those drafts, Familia. It's people are really getting in the Underdog. So get in there and put in Familia 23 while you're at it. And oh my goodness, Familia, I've been kind of like wanting to have this our invitado de lujo on with me for a while now. I mean, and I'm so glad that he's here. I tell you, I've been a fan for a while, quite a while, and it's not just because I learned the proper usage of the word dank from him. So no, I as you guys know, I so enjoy having some of the smartest people in the industry on here chop it up so I can learn, so we can all learn. And he is El Rey of Upside Wins Championships. And in fact, he helped me, after reading that, I actually used some of those concepts and won a baseball championship. So go figure that. So, and he is, the man, el hombre, when it comes to dank stats on fantasy with our amigos at Fantasy Points. I won't give him a hard time for being a Met fan, but I will say it is such a pleasure to have finished off the 2 bars combo, 2 bars with a Z. So big bienvenido to Scott Barrett, mi amigo. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Estás en tu casa?
What's up, Jorge? Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. Really wish I paid more attention in Spanish class growing up, but thanks for having me.
Hey, you know what? It's good. It's good. As I always love to tell people, it's like 98%. It's 99% English, and the 1%, like you probably heard it in a restaurant or in 9th grade Spanish. So I'll leave you off the hook on that. I'll at least you know how to order food in Spanish. So that's a good
I always
thing.
think about like what would happen if I just like woke up from a long flight and I'm, in Spain or something, and I'll know how to go to the library. Donde está la biblioteca? And then anything else, I'm just screwed.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of tacos in Spain, so it's there. It's tapas. So
That's right.
do I do recommend the seafood in Spain? It is spectacular. If you like fried food, go to the south. It's incredible. It's incredible. Oh man. So Scott, we're a little more than about a week and a half out from the NFL draft. So I kind of, when did you feel like the dust had really settled and you could kind of get going on with your rankings?
Again, for maybe like the 3rd year in a row, I really didn't feel like I had to make too many dramatic changes following the draft. So, once day 3 racked up, I just quickly dove into the rankings and got those pretty much solidified. Wide receiver, I guess, which is the topic today, I will say, was the big mover. But even then, I didn't see many dramatic changes beyond, Jonathan Mingo going earlier than expected, or Rashee Rice landing with the Chiefs. But outside of that, maybe Jalen Hyatt. Not too many major surprises.
Yeah, that one. Well, we're gonna get into those surprises, and that's the thing. This class has been talked about. Kind of, it's a little bit of a step down compared to the last couple of classes where we had some really good players come out of the last few classes. But there are some gems in there that always seem to pop on in rookie seasons. Kind of. Compared to the last couple of years, what is your excitement level on this class?
Oh, it's extremely low. I guess after the 106 and Superflex, yeah, I think you're best off trading for a 2024 rookie pick or acquiring like a Brandon Ayuk type veteran. I felt this way pre-draft. I felt like the bearer of bad news or like a depressing podcast guest because I just kept trashing especially the running backs and just the wide receivers wasn't as high on them as everyone else. But yeah, I mean, there's some good landing spots at least, and
Yeah.
some it might not even be the case where it's, you know, a bad class as a whole. It's just kind of hard to tell pre-hindsight who the few studs are. I just see a lot of red flags for a lot of these guys, but you know, everything goes their way. They could be a fantasy difference maker for sure.
Yeah, you know what? Because it's one of those times you almost don't know how to quantify what's, you know, inside, you know, between the temples and, you know, inside their chest to see what, you know, what's going to make them, you know, what's going to make someone become a Justin Jefferson. Or, well, you saw Jamar Chase coming from a mile away. I mean, he's the only guy who had the, I think you said he's the only guy who had the perfect ranking.
The only perfect wide receiver prospect I've ever seen. And
look what we've seen. He's my 101, by the way, right now. So I'm catching a little flack for putting him over JJ, but I think what I saw at the end of the season has me putting him as number one. I do have a couple of fun ones before we get into this. I need to know: have you broken out those shirts that were delivered during one of the live streams at the NFL draft?
What is it? What is this?
One of the shirts that, let me see. Didn't you get some shirts delivered to you during one of the live streams?
Yeah. Did you? I was moving those. Those were on my couch. Yeah. My girlfriend went crazy, and she's sick of my wardrobe. I wear the same. I'm wearing it right now. Here, my old Power Hour DFS shirt, and yeah. So we now have maybe 20 new shirts from H&M and 20 new pants. So hopefully I'll be a little bit more fashionable on future podcasts.
You know what? Or just when you're out with her, come on, you know, you got to keep the rep when you're on pot. When you're
well, I told her, yeah, like my instinct is to just, you know, sweatpants, you know, fantasy points t-shirt, and that's it. So she also needs to maybe set out the clothes at night or something to get me to wear them.
Okay, so I want to go back two quick ones before we jump in. On a stream, and I believe it was last year, you mentioned that it may have been your very first or one of your first fantasy articles was a baseball article about Arky Vaughan being better than Derek Jeter, I believe. Is that it? I couldn't find it, by the way.
It's on Number Fire. I'm not sure if it's still there, but yeah. So I started as a fantasy baseball writer under JJ Zacharyson at numberfire.com. I think my first ever article was on Masahiro Tanaka's transition to the MLB. But I wrote an article before that on a WordPress that R.A. Dickey was going to win the Cy Young. And it was like a half joking piece. And then he won the Cy Young. And so like, I'm like, damn, I might have a future in this. But before that, in college, I was a philosophy, political science double major. And my friend had Adderall, and I did it for the first time ever. And I went to the computer lab, and it was like 3 a.m. And I was like, all right, I have to write this 20-page paper on Immanuel Kant. And so I sit down, and instead of doing anything like that, I see that my friend just started his own baseball blog. And, you know, big time Yankees homer. So it was why Derek Jeter is like the greatest player of all time. And so like, I just wrote in the replies, he's not even the best shortstop of all time. That's Arky Vaughan. And I wrote probably like 5,000 words from like 2 a.m. until noon, just like completely neglecting my paper all on this. And this was like basically like my first ever fantasy article. Like I remember thinking like, oh, I wish I could do this for a living. And then I got the job with JJ, and I ended up turning that into a piece, like salvaging it. I think my friend did that one blog post and never posted again, but that was the start of a blossoming career for me.
So was there a main defensive point to it? Or is it just the fact that Arky Vaughan walked a lot?
I have no idea. I can't even remember it. Era adjusted, I guess he was the better hitter or something, but yeah, it's all football knowledge. All the baseball knowledge has been depleted.
Well, you know what? You got the R.A. Dickey one right, so that was pretty interesting.
Right.
Even though he beat out Clayton Kershaw that year, but they were both studs that year. That was
if you asked a 12-year-old Scott who the greatest shortstop of all time was, he would probably say Ray Ordonez. That was my favorite player by far. Couldn't hit, but what a fielder.
Exactly. Could catch it. He caught everything. I remember him. That was a great defensive infield. That was
one of the best all time.
Yeah,
Edgardo Alfonso.
Oh yeah, Alfonso. Yeah,
Ventura
first.
Yes, Ventura first. That's right. Yeah.
God, that was and those guys could all hit too. So that was awesome. That was fun. All right. Last bit of fun. So also I remember hearing on a stream. I don't think it was last year. I think it might have been the year before. And you were on with, I think it was JM to win. And he quoted that receptions worth 2.7, worth 2.7 more times than a rushing attempt. And you were like, that's my stat. You're like, that's my stat. Can you at least attribute it to me? I was like, did you want him to attribute it more, or were you just flattered?
Probably flattered. Yeah. So weighted opportunity. I do say in the article to just like steal it, but like, I don't need credit. Go ahead and steal it. I think it was just kind of flabbergasted that he knew about it. But yeah. So for running backs and PPR leagues, a target is worth 2.5 times as much as a carry. Outside of the red zone, it's 3 times as much. So it just kind of hints at, we want pass catching running backs. But yeah, that's really funny. You clearly did your research. Props to you. Or you've been this interview has been long overdue.
Well, I didn't just do my research. No, that was just me listening to you guys. You're one of the, gosh, 2 bars is always one of my favorites to listen with you guys. And I think at that time I was really, really trying to hone my craft on DFS, and you guys, I love the dynamic you guys had. So yes, long overdue, mi amigo, long overdue. Well, let's jump into the receivers real quick. So Familia, as a tribute to Spinal Tap and also to pay homage to a certain invitado's favorite team, we're going to 11 on this. So we're going to take the top 11 wide receivers according to Scott's rankings on fantasypoints.com. Make sure, Familia, get in there, get your subscription. This is the time. There's going to be so much good stuff coming up. But we're going to have 11 guys. I think the consensus number one, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, went number 20 overall, round 1. But Seattle, is there a little bit of concern that Metcalf and Lockett might hurt his value, at least in the first year?
Yeah. So let me just say, I love the prospect. To me, this is you're traveling back in time and you're drafting Keenan Allen in 2013. Keenan Allen has finished as a fantasy wide receiver 1 in, 6 straight seasons, maybe 9 straight healthy seasons, just an absolute stud. The landing spot really unideal in the short term. If he went to Green Bay, I could have promised you 100 catches this year. But it's not just that he has to compete for targets alongside Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. It's also, we have a stubborn old school head coach in Pete Carroll who likes to go run heavy and loves his 12 personnel. Last year, Seattle had 3 wide receivers on the field. I think only 63% of the time. It was like one of the bottom 6 marks in the league. And a reporter asked Pete Carroll about this in the post-draft press conference. Well, you have Shane Waldron, who ran 11 personnel at one of the highest rates in the league with the Rams. You just drafted a 3rd wide receiver round 1. So should we expect a rise in 11 personnel? And he was like, no, we love our tight ends. This is more about when we do have 3 wide receivers on the field, it's like maximizing those plays, but no, we're still going to mix a lot. And so that just like really cuts out the floor on Smith-Njigba. The potential for him to be a 60 route share guy that puts him at like wide receiver 75 in terms of routes run per game. It's just like such a brutal short-term landing spot. So again, I think this is like drafting Keenan Allen. But I also think he's going to be much cheaper in 3 months. I think it's going to be a rocky year 1. I'm still trying to draft him everywhere I can. But I'm also fading him in redraft.
Yeah, that one, it's so hard. Yeah, and on best ball, I've passed him by a couple of multiple times just because it's like, you know what? I compared him to who else was out there. In fact, I think he was right around where Lockett is, and it's kind of hard to say, what Lockett's been the last several years to bypass him at that point. But yeah, I'm with you. He was my favorite receiver. I honestly, in my many years of watching football, I've never seen a better performance than what he did in the Rose Bowl. Smith-Njigba did. So when you see that that's in there, I think that I'm actually looking forward to when he's got a bigger chunk of the pie. All right. Speaking of big, we're going to jump into Quentin Johnston. Going in my backyard with the Chargers, Los Chargers. Big guy, great stop start, great. I mean, he's kind of like that guy that gets yak. He's got the Chargers have been Charger faithful, and the media have been calling for them to get more of a breakaway threat. He's your number 2 on this one. What is kind of your outlook? More optimistic?
Yeah, so he's a big wide receiver who plays small, and I mean that in both a good and bad way. He's extremely elusive after the catch. By career missed tackles forced per reception, he leads all Power 5 wide receivers since at least 2014. By yards after the catch per reception, that's a little bit more predictive. He ranks top 15 over the same span, and that's just a rare trait. That's a valuable trait. One really cool stat I liked. So his numbers were really good, despite playing through a number of injuries. And then if you looked at what happened to TCU when he wasn't on the field, they were significantly worse. Their passing yards per game average dropped by 42%. Something that matters to me with my model is I penalize slot wide receivers. And I also especially penalize wide receivers who see a high percentage of their production come on deep slot targets, where they're lined up against a safety or a linebacker. It's just like way easier to put up numbers on those sorts of routes. Quentin Johnston didn't have that advantage. He was almost exclusively out wide. But when he was in the slot last year, he averaged over 6 yards per route run. So one of the top 3 best marks of any wide receiver since 2015. So it's like, okay, if he was in the slot as often as Jalen Hyatt or Jordan Addison or Josh Downs, like how much more impressive would his production look like? But this is also where I started to, sour on this class. It's like, okay, this guy's my wide receiver 2 pre-draft. He was my wide receiver 3 behind Marvin Mims. And I know I was on an island there, but number of red flags, really high percentage of his career targets came as contested targets. Some of that can be on quarterback play, but typically that's indicative of a player who struggles to separate. And looking at wide receivers with similar numbers to him, it's all, all-time busts like JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Denzel Mims, Hakeem Butler, Tylan Wallace, Terrace Marshall. So that's a red flag. And it's also a red flag that he wasn't even good at turning contested targets into contested catches. One of the worst rate of all top 15 wide receivers in this class. He only had 3 career red zone touchdowns. Nathaniel Dell, who's like a foot shorter than he is, had 26. So he also had like a 3rd percentile weight adjusted 3 cone. And so just a number of red flags. And yeah, so when I was writing these I'm like, this guy's my wide receiver 3. And like, but yeah, so again, it's just, I like him. I do feel good about him as my wide receiver 2 in this class, but just compared to the last 5 draft classes, or maybe a veteran you can acquire or a future 2024 round 1, not as much, but again, do feel good about him as my wide receiver 2.
Yeah, and you're speaking of like dynasty. I've got the 108 in a draft, and it's like I think I'm going to be staring at Johnston, or I may reach on Levis because that's a team that needs quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he's going, I'm actually a little less worried about his workload or his target share, or well, not necessarily target share, but total targets. Because of the fact compared to JSN, because the fact that I think the Chargers just have more pass volume, more targets to go around. So I think that's what has me a little more bullish on him for 2023, even though he's competing for targets with Allen and Williams. So is that?
Yeah, so I think that's right, but it's also the Chargers didn't run 11 personnel at a really high rate. They were about league average, so he would probably be the odd man out. And then I got really bad vibes from the post-draft presser with Tom Telesco. They're like, "Oh, do you think he can start for you year one?" And they're like, "I don't know. We're really high on Josh Palmer. We'll see. You got to compete," which I know is like a stock answer, but usually these guys are a little bit more excited talking about a player they just drafted, 45 minutes earlier. But we'll see. Again, wide receiver 3, and from a redraft perspective, probably rookie wide receiver 3, I'd say.
I could see that. Well, I think the guy who Jordan Addison, I think, is the guy that could be the rookie wide receiver 1, just because of the landing spot. Not going to need to compete with target for. I'm sorry, he's walking into a big target share that Adam Thielen left behind. If he really takes that step forward, and then also never going to see the top cornerback with Justin Jefferson on the other side. Are those big reasons to be somewhat excited about Addison for 2023, being coming to the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an awesome landing spot. This is they talked about this in the post-draft presser. It's like, we think having this piece can unlock Justin Jefferson to his true potential, which immediately made me think, oh, maybe Kevin O'Connell's going to use him more like Cooper Kupp, and where he was so cornerback immune, and he just had 13 targets every single week and over 100 yards every single week. With Jefferson, you didn't see him move to the slot as much as we were hoping. But then he was also saying it's not just that, but it's because Jefferson is so elite, he does draw added attention and premier coverage looks, but that's going to leave Jordan Addison in very favorable matchups, which is absolutely the case. They did talk about wanting to go a little bit more pass heavy this year. And so, yeah, I think this year things look really good. Just in terms of like from a dynasty perspective, I will just say this was not a player. He was my wide receiver 4 pre-draft, but like still not a player is very high on at all.
Was it the step back that he took at USC this year a little bit?
No, it was just like, so you see the Bolitnikov trophy, and like that matters, and like the raw production, and that matters, but it's just like within added context, looked far less impressive to me. Like, he beat out JSN in yards per route run, but he ran a ton of routes. He only ranked 8th that year in yards per route run. His offensive coordinator, Mark Whipple, is like a DFS cheat code. Like, if you play college football DFS, you just always want Mark Whipple wide receiver 1s. And then Trey Palmer last year was more efficient by yards per route run, and he wasn't playing with a round 1 caliber quarterback. He just had Mark Whipple as his OC. Andy Isabella's another Mark Whipple guy. And part of that is Mark Whipple wide receivers, Jordan Addison, a lot of manufactured touches, a lot of screens, a lot of rub routes and pick plays designed to get him open, a lot of deep slot production, just a bunch of what I deem to be fraudulent production. And so, but again, the Bolitnikov trophy matters. But I didn't see the production profile that a lot of other people in this space did. And then beyond all that, there's serious size concerns. He's 173 pounds. He's not athletic. He ran the exact same 40-yard dash as Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker's 67 pounds heavier. And so, yeah, a lot of red flags, a lot of concerns, but it also matters that this is a great landing spot, that he's set up for success in year 1, that he has a good quarterback. And so, rookie wide receiver 3 in a class that's maybe not as good as the last few, but there's going to be some fantasy playmakers.
All right. Well, the next guy that we're going to talk about is somewhat of a playmaker himself too. Zay Flowers could have left Boston College, taken a big NIL deal. He could have gone to USC. He probably could have gone to most any other program, stuck around, but now it seems like he's getting the reward going to Lamar Jackson, even in kind of like a crowded wide receiver room with OBJ and Rashad Bateman, and of course Mark Andrews on the tight end side. But this guy has a lot of hype around him in that landing spot, especially in the Todd Monken offense. You got a little bit of a smirk. Are you? What's your? I have a good feeling what you're going to say.
Yeah, I'm going to be less depressing after this, after we get through this name. But this is another player I'm not very high on. Just like his analytics profile to me screamed extremely mid that's slang for mediocre. Just by the metrics that are important and matter to me: yards per route run, age adjusted yards per route run, yards per team pass attempt, yards after the catch per reception, teammate adjusted yardage market share. Very mediocre, in some cases sub mediocre. And then you add to that size concerns, really short. He has like first percentile arm length, implying a limited catch radius, which isn't good with Lamar Jackson, who's not a very accurate quarterback. He's also a run first quarterback. Maybe Todd Monken changes things, but I don't see it changing too much. And then he has to compete against Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham Jr. I will just say the team is insanely high on him, and it's possible. I don't think I'm wrong, but it's possible. He's like a film darling, and he just slipped through the analytics cracks for whatever reason. I do think I adjusted for that, or I corrected for that, or I tried to control for all that. But watching Eric DeCosta, who, by the way, doesn't have a great track record with wide receivers. The Ravens have never drafted a Pro Bowl wide receiver. Said he went to each one of his 10 scouts, like various area scouts, and he gave them a list of 10 guys, and he asked them to rank these 10 guys, and every single one of them had Flowers as their number one player. So, hey, I don't feel great going up against an NFL scouting department with all the money invested there, which is why, I do kind of cave to draft capital a little bit. And, I didn't hate him. He was my pre-draft wide receiver 6, but as far as being someone I'm excited to draft, I'd say no.
Yeah, I think it is. There is so much competition there, and they haven't been high volume. I mean, obviously, Todd Monken may change that a little bit more. I do hope that Lamar takes another step forward as a passer. I mean, he did throw 35 touchdowns in his MVP season, so I'm gonna see what the hype train says for this offense, and if Zay Flowers. Plus, I think it was Bateman had a list, Frank, which I think one of the last guys to come back from that was Deebo Samuel, and he was kind of uneven the year after. It was the second year after that he had that All-Pro season. So maybe it's we'll see. We're gonna keep an eye. That's something I'm gonna have Edwin make sure keeps an eye on for us. I
think Todd Monken's really interesting. The last time he called plays at the NFL level, his quarterbacks, who weren't exactly starting caliber quarterbacks or high end quarterbacks, it was Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston. They combined for the third most passing yards per game in NFL history. And so it's like, if you just take the average passing fantasy points per game of a Todd Monken starting quarterback plus Lamar Jackson's typical rushing fantasy points per game, we should expect like 45 fantasy points per game from Lamar Jackson. So this is something that like keeps me up at night. Maybe he just, breaks fantasy this year. But even if that's the case, I don't know. I struggle to see Zay Flowers breaking out.
Yeah, because I do kind of think about the fact that if Lamar could get to 4,000 passing yards and 30 touchdowns to keep doing what he's doing on the rushing and the rushing, that could be scary. That could be absolutely frightening. Oh, okay. So next one's not frightening, but one of your guys. You had him number 2 on your pre-draft, and I know you caught some flack, but you know what? I love that you were like that one that person who stands in the wind on that meme and just kind of like, okay, bring it on. Marvin Mims, I'm a fan too. So landing spot in Denver, it's a little crowded, but he's still your wide receiver 5 on this list.
That's right. I mean, technically round 2 draft capital is great. I really this is the last pick of round 2, but it's technically round 2 draft capital. I said he had the second best analytics profile in the class, and like it, maybe he's not the second best wide receiver in the class. Like that's fine, but just I couldn't, in good faith, writing the way I write, which is based on an analytics profile, have him anything less than pre-draft wide receiver 2. I talk about in high school, like he has the Texas State record by career receiving yards, the national record for best single season receiving yards. As a freshman, it was the second best age-adjusted yards per route run season since 2014. In 2021, it was the best ever yards per target season. The next year is his second different head coach, his third different quarterback. Way more productive. You saw the raw production that was missing from his profile. Really good combine. He was heavier and faster than all of ahead of Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt, Zay Flowers. Anything career related, any career stats looks incredible. I really tried to look for holes or red flags. I really didn't see anything on to the same degree as the other players we were talking. And so the landing spot, I was so excited about the landing spot, but I might be a little biased. I saw that Marvin Mims' mom followed me on Twitter. So heading into day 2, I just DM'd her. I'm like, hey, good luck. And we just started talking, and I was like, yeah, like any landing spots you're looking for? I heard my Giants really like Marvin Mims. I was like, oh, we heard that too, but it's in God's hands. We'll be happy wherever. And we just kept chatting all throughout the day. And I gave her my thoughts on the landing spot. And it's like, this is like a great landing spot. This is the first ever pick made by the head coach with the Denver Broncos. He traded up to get him. This is Sean Payton, a brilliant offensive genius. His wide receiver, his round 2 wide receivers have always smashed. It's guys like Brandon Cooks, like Michael Thomas. And yeah, so that matters. Something that the dynasty community overlooks when it comes to landing spots is understate the importance of regime certainty, or the overstate the impact of regime uncertainty. Like so many guys like Laviska Shenault, maybe Denzel Mims, they were handpicked by their coach, and they had a clear plan in place for how they were going to use and develop them. But the guy's out of the picture the next year, and the new coach comes in, doesn't care about him, doesn't fit the scheme. And so that's kind of my bias. I mean, if you want to talk about a crowded wide receiver room, that's certainly the case. But by the same token, I mean, how many rumors and reports have we heard about Sean Payton trying to trade Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton? So who knows what might happen? This is my guy, so I'm gonna have rose-colored glasses.
But you're so right. I mean, you talk about and the advice you gave his mom. I mean, it is a great landing spot. I mean, Sean Payton is calling the plays, and right. if he can fix Russell Wilson, there's gonna be some play for this kid, and if Sutton or Jeudy don't make it, they're gonna get traded. Jeudy doesn't have a long-term contract. So, and I think this is year 4. So they have to, exercise that 5th-year option for him. So
the one knock I heard on Mims constantly from the film guys was that he's raw as a prospect. He ran a limited route tree. And so it might take him like a developmental year. And so like my counter to that was just like, okay, he ran a limited route tree. Well, then he was a monster on like 4 routes. Like watch what he does with NFL coaching. He had 3 different wide receiver coaches in 3 seasons. So like, look at what he can do with some stability, but it's also like, well, in the right landing spot, maybe Denver, okay, maybe he doesn't do much this year, but they use him doing the one thing he does exceptionally well, which is as a deep threat. And then they develop him over time. And I was seeing, maybe he follows a sort of Tyler Lockett career trajectory, who was another player was very high on relative to everyone else, where it did take him a few years before he became a complete receiver. But then once he was, one of the most valuable wide receivers in fantasy.
No, I totally agree. I think he's going to be. I'm going to grab him wherever I can. I think I do have him on 1. I got him in the second round in 1. So, draft and development. Hey, I'll take it. Okay, Jonathan Mingo. going to the Carolina Panthers in the second round. I think he was the first wide receiver taken in the second round. He's getting the AJ Brown comps, which I think everybody, a lot of people are kind of tamping down the enthusiasm on that one. But you had actually an interesting note talking about how he was called in the block a lot in the second half of the season. So I know your model liked him. Now, does that like him even more?
So my model didn't really like him. It liked his 97th percentile athleticism. This is a really small, short, skinny wide receiver class, but freak athlete, big wide receiver. And so my analytics profile saw some upside for a few different reasons, but I missed one thing. I didn't figure this out until after the draft. And had I figured that out, I would have been higher on him. I'll get to that in a second. I will also say all of my film buddies, and I'm friends with some A+ level film analysts, John Costco over at PFF, who had Patrick Mahomes as the 101 the year he came out. He told me that Mingo on film is either the second or third best wide receiver in this class. Unbelievable film. And I've talked to a few guys who feel similarly about that. So the case I'll make for Mingo, the analytics community hates him. They think his analytics profile is really bad. And I think by like most of the stats you want to look at, that's mostly true. But I can craft a really compelling bull case narrative for him. And that matters. This is like what I did with Dameon Pierce last year. I said, okay, if I just tweak this one thing and it makes a lot of logical sense for me to tweak this one thing, then he is the third best running back in this class. If I don't tweak that, he's the 15th best running back in this class. But because upside matters more than downside is detrimental, I'm going to have him closer to that RB3 ranking than the RB15. And so it's a similar thing here. So the first 2 years at Ole Miss, he was buried behind Elijah Moore, which according to me and my model is like one of the best wide receivers ever. So I can't penalize him too much for that. 2021, he was averaging over 100 yards per game prior to injury. He broke his ankle. He came back. He wasn't that effective. He came back too early. Immediately at the end of the season, he had another surgery to fix that. But I mean, pre-injury, over 100 yards per game. And then in 2022, last year, he was averaging, I think through the first 6 weeks of the season, he was averaging 3.45 yards per route run. That would have led all Power 5 wide receivers last year. And then Michael Trigg, perfectly coinciding with this production drop-off, the tight end Michael Trigg suffered an injury, and he was moved to tight end on a quarter of his snaps. And maybe it was only like 15 to 20% of his routes, but I still think that matters to be blocking and the physical exertion and to be moved around like that. So he was a literal tight end in line on 25% of his snaps. And we did see this drop off in production. But again, prior to that, 3.45 yards per route run. That's an elite mark, would have led all wide receivers in this class. And then you have the 97th percentile athleticism. I mean, DK Metcalf didn't have a great analytics profile, but he did have a great athletic profile. And that's another thing that hints at upside. So after kind of being somewhat depressing and trashing, the other guys, we finally found someone who, in addition to Mims, I'm a lot higher on than anyone else, just because I do see that bull case argument that no one else is making. And he has the draft capital to back it. And that's probably the most predictive single variable we have.
Oh, love it. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see if the AJ Brown comparisons come through. So we're going to see on that one. So, love it. I think there's few people who landed in a better landing spot than Rashee Rice getting to Kansas City round 2. But, we saw that we got overheated for Sky Moore before, and we're reminded that Tyreek Hill had a, uneven rookie season in the Andy Reid offense. Thoughts on Rashee Rice?
So he led the FBS in yards per game last year. He did that despite playing with a broken toe for 75% of his games. Really high level mark by yards per route run. he was a late breakout, but he was playing behind NFL caliber receivers and Danny Gray, Kylan Granson, James Prochet. That makes it seem like I like him. I really didn't like him that much. My model has a strong bias against small school wide receivers. And if I can be honest, so do I. Really what it comes down to is like, there is that upside argument. Brett Whitefield loved him. That's our tape guy over at Fantasy Points, loved his tape. Supposedly was going to slip in the draft due to character issues, but I mean, the draft capital was good and the landing spot just couldn't be better. I will say the landing spot is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, but I'm optimistic. I mean, there's not a lot of given, set in stone competition. There's a lot of theoretical competition. I'm a big Kadarius guy. I'm a big Justin Ross guy, but this draft capital matters, and it doesn't get much better than playing with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I haven't given up on Sky Moore yet, but maybe I've been hanging around with Hansen too much in his timeline a little bit. All right, well, let's go to Green Bay. Mm-hmm. Jaden Reed going round 2, number 50 overall. Kind of crowded room with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs there, and they added 2 tight ends also in the draft. But what is your feeling on him for this year?
I don't see it as too crowded. I mean, Romeo Doubs, I don't know. I know he got a ton of hype, and maybe he did better than his draft capital implies, but we have seen a lot of teams just move on from these low draft capital guys, even if they did have an impressive rookie season. Christian Watson, I love, was really high on him relative to everyone else last year. But he's also still probably a little raw, a little inexperienced. So I like the landing spot, and with him again, even more so than Rashee Rice, draft capital is doing a lot of heavy lifting. What I liked most about him was just that I referenced him in my article this time last year as a reason why I wasn't so high on Sky Moore. He transferred from Michigan State, but to me, his freshman season at Michigan State was more impressive than Sky Moore's breakout campaign, with more target competition, worse quarterback play, and just better numbers all around. In 2021, he averaged 2.57. This is with he transferred to Michigan State. In 2021, averaged 2.57 yards per team pass attempt. That ranked 5th best among all Power 5 wide receivers from this class. And then 2022, you kind of just have to throw it out due to injury. So I was kind of lower on him pre-draft, but it was like a deep tier. And so for him, it's that draft capital and the landing spot makes me feel good about this ranking.
If you heard a little something there, that's my dog who's decided to lay down and take a nap right next to me.
So apparently, yeah, my Jaden Reed spiel bored her. So maybe your dog knows what's best, and you should feed him.
No. It's all in the earphones. No, I'm petting him, and so he's he's enjoying too much. So, well, let's talk about Josh Downs real quick. So Josh Downs going to Indianapolis. Reggie Wayne, if it's to believe, Reggie Wayne loved him. Going into it, he's going to be competing with Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and as always, a million tight ends. Evan Hull will also be catching some passes, possibly out of the backfield. But your optimism level on him?
Yeah, so I was kind of trashing him pre-draft, but that was just based on where everyone else in our industry had him. And then draft capital is really bad. And so now, like, relative to that draft capital, I'm higher on him. Maybe not higher on him than the rest of our community, but definitely higher on him than what his draft capital implied. And I didn't expect him to go that high, because he's definitely slot only. Like, at least with Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I'm open to the idea that he could be more than that. Like I said, if he was in Green Bay, I think he'd play like 100% of the snaps. In Seattle, yeah, he's off the field in 12 personnel. So Downs is the same thing. He's going to be off the field in 12 personnel with Indy, but I still just PPR cheat code upside. I like that. insanely productive wide receiver. It was another one of these wide receivers where it was like sort of fraudulent production profile, but that raw production matters to a degree. And I do like this landing spot.
Okay, well,
maybe not. I mean, I don't love the inexperienced rookie quarterback with like a 45% career completion percentage, but he did go to a team that really likes him. You brought up the Reggie Wayne thing. The GM was effusive in praise. The head coach was effusive in praise. They have a clear role for him. They want him to start right away. And so I like all that.
I think the one thing is like those, him being a slot receiver, those young quarterbacks do like those, those short to mid range kind of layup throws that the slot eats up, or when it's
that's
not
what that's what Brett said to me. And Brett wasn't high on Downs to begin with, but he was saying, well, how do you fix a quarterback with who has trouble with accuracy in the short to intermediate level of the field? You get him a really great slot wide receiver like Josh Downs.
Well, we're gonna see. We're gonna see how that one works out. Okay, we got two more. We're gonna jump on Tank Dell, who has probably it's kind of the typical, calling a big guy tiny. So it's the opposite. Such a small guy, only 5'8", I think 165 pounds. Lands in Houston, getting to play indoors. CJ Stroud supposedly, banged the door for him, or banged the drum. But I can't get past the, little guy, such a little guy being a big contributor. Right? Your feeling?
Yeah, that's kind of what I said. It's so insane production over the last two seasons, leads all wide receivers in receptions and yards, ranks second in touchdowns. I had the red zone stat I cited earlier. The issues were extreme red flag level of height, weight, athleticism. I mean, the athleticism was whatever, but it's just the really short guy. He's also old. He's 23.5 years old. Just 5'8", 165 pounds. Since 2000, there's never been an NFL wide receiver shorter or lighter to average even 11 fantasy points per game in a single season. And I also struggle with these small school guys where it's not something like, okay, well, he had the best production of the small school guys. So this means, so like his 200 catches over the last 2 years is equivalent to, 65 catches per year in the Power 5. It doesn't really work like that. It's just like your small school and your numbers are elite. It's still like there's a 30% chance you're ever anything. So it was a bunch of red flags that I just can't really quantify, like super outlier size. But I do think, the production has to mean something. So, and the draft capital was good. Apparently CJ Stroud was pounding the table for him. They hit it off at the combine and he was texting Caserio to take his guy. And they definitely, being in Houston, know him pretty well. So, I like Downs too. I'm not sure he hits. Maybe the bust rate is high, but if he does hit, I could see him hitting in a big way just because of that PPR cheat code upside. He'll get taken off the field in 12 personnel, but has the potential to be, an 8, 9, 10 catch guy like a Rondale Moore / Greg Dortch was last year.
Oh man, Dortch, who he messed up some late season fantasy.
Yeah, I just mean if you like combine those two guys, they were amazing for fantasy. But again, that goes to scheme. So you're going to want to see heavy 11 personnel. I haven't yet dug in enough into that. Bobby Slowick. Yeah, I don't really know just yet. I'll have to do more research there.
Yeah, that one I'm still I like the landing spot in Carolina more, but I'm still a little curious what the coaching staff going to Houston from an offensive standpoint, if they're going to be able to grow up CJ Stroud the right way. So okay, so this last one is going to be, I know it's going to be a little difficult for you because it's your beloved New York Giants. Jalen Hyatt went to them in round 3 and it's number 73 overall. I know you mentioned that your model liked him, but but you also looked at the scheme and had some question marks about it. So I'm gonna let you explain.
Yeah, so I thought I didn't like him. He was my pre-draft wide receiver 7. There are, big name guys who had him as the pre-draft wide receiver 1, a number of them. He won the Bolitnikoff last year, but to me, again, it was just a lot of fraudulent production. The interesting thing to me was that, like, looking at this, like what I said last year with Treylon Burks, like the only comparable production profile was Laviska Shenault. And for this player, the only comparable production / analytics profile was Gabe Davis, who's also another Josh Heupel wide receiver, but is also another. Why am I forgetting the Giants head coach name?
Daboll.
Thank you. Also another Brian Daboll wide receiver. And so, like, a question I was asking myself is like, so like maybe what you think of Jalen Hyatt depends on what you think of Gabe Davis. And it's like, I don't know what I think about Gabe Davis. I was lower on him than the rest of the staff last year, but now I'm kind of, I can see some upside for him. Definitely a player I struggle with. Just with him, it was like so much production, deep slot production. Like he just lived exclusively in the slot, and almost all of that production was coming deep, which what I talked about earlier is like, that's super fraudulent. That's super suspect. Ton of his production came in stack formations, a lot of rub routes and pick plays without deep slot targets. His yards per target average falls from 14.2 to 11.6, goes from like easily best in the class to like fringe top 10. And so it's just a bunch of stuff like that. Just as far as my Giants are concerned, I guess that's a value when, so many smart people are saying this was the pre-draft wide receiver 1. I just don't really know how he fits. I know they wanted to add speed and they thought they had that in Paris Campbell. I don't know that Paris Campbell still has that at this stage of his career. But to me, I just see a ton of slot wide receivers, and maybe they value versatility more than I do, but I just don't really know how it fits because this guy played exclusively in the slot. Darren Waller is basically a big slot. Sterling Shepard's best in the slot. Paris Campbell's best in the slot. And so, I don't really know how he fits, but I think sort of like I was saying with Marvin Mims is maybe don't expect too much this year, but a nice developmental prospect.
No, we'll see. So, last one on this class. Any sleepers beyond number 11 that you want to keep an eye
on? Yeah, I'll say Kayshon Boutte. I wrote up. He's basically this year's Justin Ross, and like, of course, I'm probably way too high on him. Fell in the draft supposedly due to character issues. That's like football character and also off the field character issues. Athleticism concerns. He had that injury. And, maybe he came back a little too soon before he was ready. What concerns me though, is that when he was 17 years old, he ran a 4.34 40-yard dash. And at the combine, he ran 4.5 flat, and he refused to retest it at the pro day. So there's some concern that he's just not the same level of player he once was. But I mean, those first 2 seasons, that analytics profile was incredible. A lot of, age-adjusted yards per route run. Prior to his injury, I think he was the betting favorite for the Bolitnikoff. I think he had like 5 times as many career receiving yards as Jaxon Smith-Njigba when he went down with an injury. So I just see upside there. And that's me, I always try and gravitate towards those upside guys because, I mean, what else is there? Michael Wilson, Charlie Jones, give me the guy who could be a thing if he is a thing.
Oh, I'm hoping for Puka, being a Ram fan, but
I like Puka. I'll say that.
Okay, good. I've heard. I think. Did you call him Robert Woods?
No, that was Debro.
Oh, okay. Oh man. So 2 last ones for you. One, what was you mentioned the early work, especially with JJ. What was some of the best early advice that you got when you were starting?
I don't know. I kind of have to learn things the hard way. So I think whatever advice I got, I just like ignored it and forgot about it. If I could go back in time and give myself some advice, well, I'll say this. My biggest issue was that I was like trying way too hard. And for some people, they see consistent linear growth. Like I'm trying to mentor up some of the writers we have, like Jake Tribby, Ryan Heath, and it's just incredible. Like, I'll give feedback. The next article is even better. They internalize it, they improve. Next art, and they just keep blowing me. I was never like that. It was just like stagnant growth where I was just like so bad. And then just like one day, everything clicked. And I've just been like the same level of good ever since I wrote this one article on Frank Gore like 5 years ago. Also advice, I could have been less of a dick. I kind of had a chip on my shoulder, and I would like go at other analysts to kind of prove how good I was. And it just like rubbed people the wrong way and cost me some jobs in the industry. So I don't know what the best advice was, but like the advice I could go back in time and give myself would be, don't be a dick. And it was like good for me too. Cause I sucked. And then just one random day I was exponentially better. And so reveling in that obscurity was good for me, because if it came too quickly, I wouldn't have been ready for it. And I would have made a bunch of enemies. Like people just didn't know who I was. And then they randomly knew who I was. So I don't know, like patience and enjoy the process, and don't be too impatient or overeager, I guess.
Oh, awesome. I think that's great life advice, not just for fantasy. So, all right. So closing it out with a fun one. Mexican food. You're down in Tejas.
Mhm.
So, but your favorites.
So Houston has amazing Mexican food. El Tiempo is incredible. Can't recommend that place enough. But if I have to be totally honest, the place I daydream about the most is Taco Bell. I'm sorry to break your heart, Jorge, but just like I fantasize about a cheesy gordita crunch at least once per day, or Crunchwrap Supreme. I know it's trash, but it's just like it's so affordable. It's always there. There's also a nostalgia factor. Like me and my friends would, in high school, we would just like hang out in the Taco Bell parking lot. So it's partly that. It's like my feel good food, even if it doesn't make my stomach feel good after.
Well, at 2 o'clock in the morning after some drinking, it does soak up the alcohol. So I'll give you that. I'll give you that. One of these days, Edwin and I are going to take you out for some good carne asada or some tacos dorados, and we'll make sure it gets done right. So
Tacos Dorados, not tacos Doritos.
yeah, tacos dorados. Yes, yeah, that's the authentic deep fried tacos. So it's good stuff.
Damn.
It's good stuff. Those are the ones my mom makes. So you want to make a trip out to the SoCal? We'll I'll take you over to Mama Martine's house.
Oh, the best, maybe the best food I've ever had in my entire life. Fish tacos in San Diego.
Oh,
The best ever.
Nothing
competes.
Yeah, it really, yeah. It messes. It's like flying first class. You're just ruined for fish tacos anywhere else. You just have to have them there. It's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
My ex-stepmother's ex-stepmother lived in San Diego, and we would go there like every couple of years, and the entire time we would just live at the beach, and I would eat nothing but fish tacos all day.
Oh, that's
so good.
That is such good stuff. Now I gotta get down to a Padre game. So it gives me a reason to get some fish tacos. So, oh man, amigo, this was long overdue, but I had a blast. I had a blast so much. Big things coming for Fantasy Points this year. Please feel free to plug anything you want.
Yeah, I don't know. Check out your podcast. I'm really glad I did this. You're the utmost professional. This was an absolute blast, and I can't wait to be back.
Oh, thank you so much, man, amigo. Thank you so much. Yes. Hey, you know what? If please listen to this guy. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube for Familia FFB right there. So this is awesome. Thank you so much. One more time, quick shout out our amigos over at Underdog. Make sure to use that promo code Familia23, Familia 23 if you want to do it in Spanish, and we're going to match you up to $100. And lastly, just closing it out, go to familiaffb.com. Got a little content coming out there. Keep going to, and if you want this on audio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts, we're on there too. So otra vez to Scott, our invitado. I know this was long overdue, but this was un gran placer. This was just beyond awesome. Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you for joining. Hope you enjoyed it even as much as I did, because I know you will have enjoyed it a lot. And always remember, todos somos familia. Salud.